that quote about God punishing the children for the sins of the parents to the third and fourth generation, even before Karen read it today, we've heard that line before, haven't we? Perhaps we've even quoted it. But do you recall the lines which come before and after it? Because in the same verse, Numbers announces the Lord is slow to anger, abounding in love, and forgiving sin and rebellion. A threat to punish and an assurance of forgiveness in the same verse. Yet we often focus on the punishment. Why? 2 verses later, God reassures, I do forgive them. Our selective attention and memory often highlight the bad news, the punishment, while ignoring the good news, the forgiveness. You know, the media count on that phenomenon with us, right? Focusing on the bad news. But there's a genuine danger, even a dishonesty, when we take things out of context like that. And so, like our first sermon in this Job series several weeks ago, that sermon was about the impatience of Job. Today we also seek to alter a misconception. This time, a misconception about God and punishment. I recall a family whose youngest daughter suffered from a high fever when she was 3. The parents didn't trust the local medical professionals, so they took her across county lines to a hospital with a well-respected chief of pediatric medicine. Even the title was impressive. Well, that doctor misdiagnosed the little girl's illness, thus failing to treat her high fever properly. Subsequently, the child became profoundly mentally and physically disabled for the rest of her life. Other children also suffered misdiagnoses at the hands of this physician, who was eventually unmasked as a complete fraud, a quack, as we would say. Imagine. When the couple brought the now handicapped little one home from the hospital, their next-door neighbor, a close friend from church, rather matter-of-factly informed the mother, well, that's just God's judgment for you being a bad mother. Yeah, how cringeworthy is that? It's a repugnant, insensitive, thoughtless allegation. A few weeks ago, you may recall, we reflected on unintentionally saying things that hurt people. This was intentional. And so at the very least, we have to question, even if the friend thought it, did she really have to say it out loud? And that's exactly the point this morning. Because we confess there are many times when we don't speak such things out loud, but secretly believe them. We privately wonder if there isn't some sort of divine retribution, lurking behind someone's suffering. I wonder what they did to cause this. Because you see, it's always easier to consider humans to be bad rather than the alternatives. What are the alternatives? Well, there are 2 major alternatives. One is that God's really the bad one here and not the individual. Or that God is, yes, good, but just powerless. The kind, elderly, grandparent type who's completely unable to defeat evil. Well, what good is that? I mean, we don't really want to entertain either of those possibilities, do we? Because we cannot worship a deity who's bad, nor a deity who's impotent. I mean, making humans the objects of punishment, that's far easier for us to fathom, even if we ourselves are the ones being punished. Better for us to be bad than God. In chapter 23, however, Job goes where we don't want to go. He alleges God is bad. That God is embodying the concept of a holy terror. The Almighty has terrified me, he clearly declares. Simply stated, God then is a divine terrorist, the one responsible for wreaking this havoc in Job's life. Which is similar to the line about God visiting punishment to the third and fourth generations. Because that idea is rather threatening too, and many of us believe it. We even cite evidence to support our conviction. I mean, we're quite adept at finding blame. It's really just a Christian version of that Hindu concept of karma, where one's behavior comes back to, either bless or to curse. I mean, consider the fact that most child abusers were abused during their formative innocent years. Similarly, people with an alcohol problem or other addiction are often the latest example in a historical line of addictive disorders in their family. Visiting the sins of the parents to the third and fourth generations, visiting the sins of the parents upon the children, appears to be a genuine threat. Well, I, for one, don't believe it's a threat, as much as a plain old statement of fact. Because our behaviors, both the learned behaviors and the genetic behaviors, they all carry through the years. So visiting the sins of the parents upon the offspring 3 or 4 generations later is real. I mean, that's established fact. But is it punishment? I mean, sinful actions have logical consequences that we call punishment. But again, I have to ask, is it really punishment? Give an example. Let's make a distinction here. Children who play with matches may get their fingers burned, right? That's a logical, negative consequence. It's not punishment. Punishment is a deliberate, intentional, retributive act, such that when a parent, smacks those little fingers, that's a punishment. Or the fire marshal recommends the child enter juvenile detention, that's punishment. Getting your fingers singed isn't punishment. It's a logical consequence of dangerous behavior. So, when we commit and recommit a sin, it often becomes a bad habit, maybe even a part of us, a modus operandi, or MO, as they say on the TV police dramas. We perpetuate that cycle, often unwittingly, and sometimes for generations. Oh, those Millers. They've been that way as long as I can remember, as long as your grandparents can remember. I mean, there's no need to blame the negative situation on God. God's not at fault. Humans are to blame for the sins and the results of those sins recurring generations later. God's not making a threat in this verse as much as acknowledging our reality. Now, I'm enough of a pragmatist, a practical thinker, to know that despite these facts which we just went over, some folks still want to make God the author of all of this trouble in our lives. And I get it. But quite frankly, there's little or nothing anyone can say that will dissuade these folks from their thinking. You know, when certain people believe that they are being punished by God, they believe that they are being punished by God. Because it's easier to blame God than take responsibility for one's actions. Yet even some of those folks don't really want to believe that God is to blame. They just can't imagine another solution. And so to them, I would say, go on believing that God is the cause of your suffering, that God is the punisher, the harsh disciplinarian, the wrath-filled divine terrorist. Believe what you want. But also know that God compassionately rectifies that problem by providing a solution, an end to the punishment of which you accuse God. What I'm saying is that God forgives sin. Even if you prefer to believe that God is the one who fulfills these threatening curses against you, even if I cannot persuade you otherwise, please know that God forgives sin, that God redeems evil. Again, the Lord is slow to anger, abounding in love, and forgiving sin and rebellion. God negates sin. God breaks that pattern. God obliterates the cycles of sin and evil, of addiction and pain and emotional turmoil and disease and bad luck, because God is more powerful than sin. That's what almighty means. I mean, this is the good news. God forgives. None of us needs wallow in punishment, in doubt, fear, questioning, guilt, shame. We can be set free from this spiritual bondage. So up to this point in the sermon, it's all kind of been out there and, other people and academic. But let's get personal and bring it home. What is the sin that oppresses you? Excuse me. What is the sin that oppresses you? What are those maladaptive behaviors, family histories, patterns, secrets that terrify and terrorize you? Is it an addiction? Or is there a tragedy of which you're innocent, truly, but an unthinking, unkind, ungracious person blamed you, kind of like that poor mother at the beginning of the sermon, and that accusation has pained you to the core ever since? And although you know, like Job, that it could not have been your fault, yet because that accusation came from someone you respected, it has hurt you, it has damaged your sense of self-worth and goodness. Or is there an actual sin which you admit but never sought forgiveness for? from that individual or that group or even from God. And now, everything that goes wrong in your life, from illnesses to accidents, you interpret it as a direct result or punishment for that one mistake. The oppressive, tyrannical power that sin holds over us. There it is. And so I ask again, what is the sin that oppresses you and brings you low? It's not God who oppresses. It's sin. God delivers us from sin. I mean, what do we think Holy Week and Resurrection Day are all about, right? We're forgiven. We're set free. And so that line about the iniquity of the parents, being visited to the third and fourth generations, for many, that's a curse. But the message today is that God works over time to overwhelm and overcome that curse. He breaks the power of canceled sin, Charles Wesley wrote. He sets the prisoner free. His blood can make the foulest clean. His blood availed for me and for you and for everyone. We sang that earlier in the service. For indeed, the good news is this, and I'll say it again, the Lord is gracious and merciful, slow to anger, and abounding in steadfast love. You need beat yourself up no longer. You need suffer the results of sin no more. You only need to accept the forgiveness that a grace-filled, loving God offers you. It's there. Take it. I mean, during Holy Week, we know that we have a deliverer who is a man of sorrows and well acquainted with grief. Your grief and my grief. Isaiah is spot on when he tells us that. For as high as the heavens are above the earth, so great is God's steadfast love toward us. As far as the east is from the west, so far does God remove sins from us. The psalmist tells us indeed that like a father who has compassion on his children, so the Lord has compassion on those who love him. God does not retain his anger forever, because he delights in showing steadfast love, the prophet Micah reminds us. He will again have compassion on us. He will tread our sins and wrongdoings underfoot. Receive that grace, that forgiveness today. Receive it as you're sitting here receiving these words from God directly. Not from my lips, but from the Holy Scripture. Receive that forgiveness and that new life when you come forward to receive these consecrated elements of bread and wine today. Claim the change. Receive the healing. Be transformed. Spend a little time in praise and thanksgiving on your knees at this communion rail for exactly that love and forgiveness. Visiting the sins of the parents to the third and the fourth generations. God, a holy terror? Maybe. A God who breaks the cycle, who removes the worrisome fear and suffering, and forgives? Yes. A God who really forgives? Really? Yes. Really. This is the good news. Go in peace.